So I'm going to advertise for Gettysburg, Pennsylvania while we're here. All right. Don't even have Patriot Brew. I'm having to drink water. Let's get into it quick though, and let me know if audio is working. Colleen, thank you so much. I'm glad you were on tonight because I did not realize the microphone was flipped, and now you should have me. I'm going to open up chat and see. See, I should have been watching the chat. Thank you. I love homemaking 2706. You had it right from the beginning, Nicholas. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Nicholas, for letting me know you can hear me now. We're gonna do better on this. Okay, let's jump in. So here's what I was talking about for those 3 minutes that no one heard me. Once again this week, we have a broken Senate, and what I want to talk about tonight is this unwillingness to do the very most basic function of government. The American philosophy of government is laid out right there in the Declaration of Independence that we're celebrating this year, 250th. But right there in the Declaration, as we talk about in all of our classes, it says that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So the whole purpose of government, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, getting their only power, just power, from us. So governments are instituted. Why? To secure these rights. What rights? We just got through saying that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, so and then right before that, we say, Jefferson says, the other things like truth and the whole concept of God being in the equation, all these things. Okay, that's why government exists. It's supposed to secure life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So the very most basic function. And yet here we have a broken government, unwilling to act in the U.S. Senate with very clear solutions. This is not even is this a good program or not a good program? We're talking about removing rapists and murderers and thugs and gang members and pedophiles and all the rest that came here illegally, have no right to be here, and also removing people that came here maybe legally under absurd administrations, but are anti-American and working against us. That should be revoked as well. That's not even part of this debate, though. We're talking about removing the gang members, rapists, and pedophiles. And the Democrats don't want to do that. They care more about having those thugs here in the United States to hopefully be able to manipulate the elections than they care about you and your children and our neighborhoods and our country and their duty under the Constitution to secure life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So because of this supposed impasse, but it's not really an impasse. Okay, this would be an impasse if we currently had 51 Democrats and 49 Republicans, or 50-50, and somehow a shared power thing like we had to do a few years ago when we had a tie 50-50, and the vice president had to come in and break the tie, and we just couldn't get the vote to the floor at 50-50. That's not what we have. We have a clear majority. No one questions that. We have 53 senators that are Republicans that have said they will vote for the SAVE Act, that they will vote to secure our elections, that they will vote to fund our ICE agents to go do the job that the president was elected to do. So you have the votes, 53-47, get up and vote, end of story, done, move on with the other business that you might need to do for the American people. And unfortunately, we have apparently 4 or 5 or maybe 10, I don't know how many, because John Thune is hiding the corruption of the Senate and the unwillingness of them to vote on these things. But apparently there's at least 4 that are unwilling to have a straight up vote 53-47 because they're hiding behind this cloture and the zombie filibuster, where they have bought into the idea that it's better for Republicans and Democrats if you have to have 60 votes to do everything, which means they've bought into the idea that minority rule is better than majority rule. In other words, they don't believe in the basic concept of how a democracy works, and certainly the way a constitutional republic works, but frankly, any democracy is supposed to buy into the idea of majority rule. And so our particular form of government, constitutional republic, obviously requires majority vote. But is it obvious? And that's what I want to talk about tonight. How do we fix this? And is there a constitutional answer to getting back to majority rule? In order to really cover that tonight, I got to give a little bit of background on, well, let's start with what's being done right now, the filibuster that's being used to kill the SAVE Act and to kill the funding of ICE. The whole concept here is that Republicans are thinking, okay, the Democrats at some point are going to have the majority in the Senate again, might get it this time if they keep acting like this. most certainly will get the House if the Senate keeps acting like this, just the way the politics breaks down and the seats that are up this time around. But what these Republican senators are thinking is the Democrats will be in charge, and when they are, I want to still have some power, and I want us to be able to stop the Democrats from doing things with only 51 or 53 or 55 votes. As long as we have, at least 40 votes, we can stop them from going off the rails. That's what they're thinking. Okay, that might be a decent strategy if you decide that it's just better to never do anything big. It's better that we don't do the corrections as well. And then, of course, I'm going to end up on a rabbit trail here, but the problem with that is those same Republicans then allow for a death by 1,000 cuts during Democrat majorities and administrations, and they never come back in the Republican administrations and majorities and fix that and take ground back. Donald Trump's the only guy that's been willing to take ground back. Mike Johnson to some extent, but not the Senate for sure. Certainly not John Cornyn, certainly not John Thune, and never in a million years Mitch McConnell. So their game plan, their strategy that they've used all these years to try to not get rid of the filibuster, protect the filibuster, because we'll be in the minority someday. And when they say filibuster, it's a lie. It's not an actual filibuster where somebody has to stand up and talk. It's actually a procedural rule where they can turn in a piece of paper and threaten to talk and never have to actually do it. And so they have protected that. The Republicans and Democrats have protected that out of this, I think, ill-fated, very erroneous view that someday we want to be able to rule from the minority or be able to have a seat at the table when we're in the minority, so much so that we can stop the majority from doing what they think is right. I think it's fundamentally flawed. I think that is anti-democratic, anti-constitution for sure. But again, put a pin in that because we're gonna talk about whether or not it's anti-constitution. What's the Constitution actually say about the percentage vote that's required, and is there a solution there that we need to start working on? So I hope I'll come back to that. Y'all don't let me forget. So anyway, the whole idea is flawed in the first place. I think I've said forever, David Barton has said forever, we've been intellectually honest about this, never deviating from the idea that majority should rule. Whether it's been Republicans in charge or Democrats in charge over the last 30 years, we have consistently said the filibuster as implemented through this, 60-vote requirement is wrong. That is not how a constitutional republic should work. You should not let the minority rule. It's a bad concept from the beginning. Now, it makes sense on major big issues like amending the Constitution. Then yes, you want more than a majority. You could argue for other big issues. I mean, under the Articles of Confederation, before we had the Constitution, they had a lot of items that required 9 of the 13 states to be in favor of, which was actually almost a 70% vote. That's a 69% vote when you break it down. And they had a whole list of items: going to war, going into debt. I mean, there was a ton of things that they did require supermajority on, but it was 1 vote per state as well. And honestly, if it was back to 1 vote per state, I might could go there because, you've got a majority of sane states still out there that potentially could get 30 votes on a regular basis or 34 votes on a regular basis. But that's not what we have right now. But I do think you could say if in the Constitution you want to specifically require 2/3 for certain things, there's some impeachment. I think impeachment should require 2/3. And the Constitution, of course, requires that. So there are times where it makes sense, but as a general rule, or for every bill to be passed, or for something like this that should really be a basic idea that you have to be a citizen to vote, when 82% of the country is with you, then you should not need 2/3 of the Senate. You should still have, just statistically, you should have 2/3 of the Senate voting yes. If 82% of the American people want it, you would think 2/3 of senators would want it. By golly, at least the 53 Republicans would want it bad enough that they would vote for it and get rid of this stupid zombie filibuster. But unfortunately, that's not the case because the Democrat Party, because they don't answer to the American people anymore. They answer to their big donors and their radical leftist, controlling factors. They don't care that most Americans don't want guys and girls sports. They don't care that most Americans don't want you chopping off the genitals of kids. They don't care that most Americans do not want illegals voting in our elections, and that most Americans think it makes sense to have to prove that you are who you are when you go to vote. They don't care because it's more important to them that they have a system they can manipulate and cheat in order to hold on to the minority that they have and potentially the majority in the future. And the reason is because, friends, if you want to know what's happening behind the scenes, I don't know this from having meetings with them. I know this from the data. They know, their polling is telling them that people are leaving the Democrat Party in droves. And I'm talking red, white, yellow, black, and brown. I'm talking rich and poor. I'm talking every category you can think of. They are leaving the Democrats, and most of those categories are moving to Republicans, not just staying independent. There's a percentage huge in young males of all races. There's a percentage huge in black males of all ages. The only group that's sticking with the Democrats or moving to the Democrats are white women. Would you white women, especially liberal women, but overall white women, get rid of your whatever it is, your insecurities, your guilt complex for stuff you didn't even do? Are there any white women watching tonight that had slaves? Are there any white women on tonight that own any slaves right now? Did your mama own slaves? Did your grandmama own? I don't think so. So what is your problem? Why are you so foolish that you want ICE to go away and allow predators in your neighborhood to rape your children? That's very blunt, I know, but that's exactly what they're doing. So I know it's not you white women that are on tonight. So it's white women in general. I'm married to one, and she's amazing, and she doesn't fit that category. I'm going to get a lot of hate mail for that one. All right. So anyway, back to the groups. Because the Democrats know that all of these groups are sick and tired of these insane policies, and they know they're not going to move away from those policies because the left controls their party right now. Because they know that, they know they cannot win in the future without being able to cheat. They cannot win in the future without allowing illegals to vote. And so knowing the trend is most likely going to hold for at least the next 8 or 10 years. And I think if we do the right things, we can make that a generational shift. But because they know that, they are digging in. They are holding on to make sure that they can keep their cheat system in place. Okay. Now, the idea that they want to be able to hold on to the election system being as easily manipulated as it is, and prevent us from removing illegals so that they can manipulate the numbers. They don't want the voter rolls to be cleaned up. I mean, all those things. That's what we start with. So then, what do Republicans do? How do Republicans respond to a minority party that is controlling things? Why in the world would Republicans leave town and go home? Why would John Thune allow them to recess and let Chuck Schumer be the one to decide whether or not we get security in our elections? Why would Chuck Schumer even have a seat at the table? If the Democrats only have 47 votes, Republicans should be able to do everything necessary. The American people have given them the majority. And like this or not, if the American people give the Democrats the majority, they will absolutely do what they think is the best policy, or the policy that protects them, whether it's best or not. They're going to do that. And if they get the votes, they should. And I don't think we should be able to stop them. If it flips and it's 47-53, I don't think we should be able to stop them with a filibuster, a fake filibuster, zombie filibuster. I think that's wrong. I think the American people asked for it. They deserve it. They should get it. And I know that's self-destructive, but, that's how elections work. That's how the process is supposed to work. I want the process to work. I want to protect the Constitution and the system, so that then when we win elections, we can actually take the country back and claw back the ground that's been taken in the years that they had it. So that's all basically to set up. Majority rule should absolutely happen. The filibuster must go. The fake filibuster, the zombie filibuster. You should have to stand up there and talk for as long as you can without passing out, without having any help. That you ought to be able to do. And if you can slow things down and muck up the works for 48 hours, and there's another member that can do it for 48 hours, everybody gets a shot at doing it, and it takes 2 months to pass a bill, so be it. That's actually beautiful to me. That's actually a representative government in action. I love that idea. I would love to see the Democrats stand up there and lock everything down for 2 months, with all of their members filibustering the SAVE Act and funding ICE, and have to make their arguments, and our side get to respond. And at the end of the day, the vote gets cast, and 53-47, we win, and we move on. I mean, it's exactly what happened with the Civil Rights Act in the 60s. It took 2 months to get it passed because the racist Democrats filibustered it. So that would be beautiful. Why are we not doing that? Why are we not going back to that? Well, I think we can. Here's how. We have to actually define. First, we go to the Constitution and find out, is it already defined that a majority vote in the Senate or the House passes a bill? The answer to that question is unfortunately no. It actually allows them to set up their own rules, and then it has exceptions where there are a specific vote percentage. There is a specific vote percentage that's required. For instance, if you're going to override a presidential veto, I made a list here. Let's go down the list. If you're going to override a presidential veto, Article 1, Section 7, Clause 2, you got to have 2/3. And you got to do that in both houses. I think that's fair. That's not majority rule, but that's actually a very unique. You've already passed a bill by majority rule, and then sent it over to the president, and now the president is vetoing it. And so for one branch to be able to overrule the other branch in that way, 2/3, okay, founding fathers, you wanted that? I think that's probably a good idea. I can live with that. So there's an example where the actual vote percentage in the House and the Senate is required on a particular item. Okay, ratifying treaties, same thing. If you're going to ratify a treaty, you got to have 2/3 of the Senate. Now, in that one, it's present, not necessarily 67. If only 50 show up, you need 2/3 of those that show up on a treaty. If you're going to kick out a member of Congress, you got to have 2/3. That's a big deal. I can live with that staying there. That's Article 1, Section 5, Clause 2. If you want to propose a constitutional amendment, so Congress or the states can propose amendments. So the states do it through a convention. Congress does it anytime they want. They have to have 2/3, just like the states have to have 2/3 to have the convention. So they got to have 2/3 to call for the convention. Okay, so that is a for Congress to propose an amendment, they got to have 2/3 in both houses. Okay, then let's see. There's a 2/3 vote required for in the 14th Amendment, Section 3, for the disqualification. When someone's been disqualified because of insurrection or rebellion, you got to have 2/3 to remove that disqualification. That was very specific to Civil War people from the South that they were preventing from running. So that one's specific, but it's a specific item in the Constitution that requires a specific vote. Let's see. Declaring a president unable to discharge the powers and duties of office. So this is when we invoke the 25th. So this probably be the most recent vote requirement percentage that we, the American people, put into the Constitution through a constitutional amendment. So this was 1967. And y'all, everybody out here that watches this probably been through Constitutional Live and Biblical Citizenship, where we talk about the 25th Amendment, how it works. You got to have 2/3 in both the House and Senate to confirm the president's inability and keep the vice president acting as president. That's when if the president disagrees. So I've done a couple of videos on this, so if you want to go watch the details. But bottom line, president or vice president, cabinet, and the cabinet invokes the 25th, says the president's incapable of fulfilling the duties. President disagrees and says, nope, I'm fine. Writes a letter to Congress saying I'm fine. Vice President, cabinet then say, no, we still disagree. That's when you go to a vote of the House and Senate, and it has to be 2/3. Okay, so those are all pretty good examples. The only one that's bigger than that is if the states propose amendments to the Constitution or Congress proposes amendments to the Constitution, we're going to go to 3/5 in order to get ratification of an amendment. So that's why you've heard us talk about all the time, 34 states to call for a convention of states, 38 states to ratify a constitutional amendment. Okay, there are also some supermajorities. Let's see. Yeah, really rare stuff. Like if you had the president, nobody gets the electoral college, it goes to the House. House chooses president by state delegations, so that it's actually even different from, it wouldn't be based on the 435, it'd be based on the 50 states. The Senate chooses vice president by simple majority, so that one does require simple majority and is called for in the Constitution. I think that's the whole list. Okay, now I wanted to lay all that out there because here's what I'm proposing tonight. I think we need a constitutional amendment that requires the Senate to pass legislation with a majority vote, other than any exceptions that you would want to keep in the Constitution. Any exceptions that the Constitution already has. And maybe as we think this through, remember what the tavern's all about, folks. This is just like in the founding era. We gather in the tavern to talk this stuff out, to iron sharpen iron, to talk about the strategies and tactics it's going to take to save the country. So what I'm proposing tonight is that we do an amendment, and maybe we do need to have some additional exceptions in there for 2/3 vote. But I think you put an amendment in the Constitution. It very simply says, it continues to say, the legislature is the lawmaking authority. but it specifically says that any bill passed by a majority of the Senate passes the Senate, and that way you get rid of the filibuster, the zombie filibuster, but you still have the regular filibuster. So a bill doesn't get to a vote to pass by a majority unless you can, stop somebody from talking. Everybody's got to have the opportunity to talk. That you could live with. So that's what I think is the only thing that's going to stop this, because I'm telling you, these Republicans are so they're willing to protect the institution of the Senate. They love saying that, the institution of the Senate, more so than protect the American people. The Declaration of Independence does not say that to protect the institution of the Senate, we're going to create a government. It doesn't say that. It says that to secure these rights. And it doesn't say life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and the institution of the Senate. It says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among. You get my point. The purpose of government is not to protect the institution of the Senate. The purpose of government is to protect the rights of the people. And clearly the Senate is not doing that. So I don't know if this will go anywhere. I don't know if anybody else has even talked about it. I haven't heard anyone propose this as a constitutional amendment. Probably have. I'm sure there may even be one filed in Congress that I'm not aware of. But let's start the conversation. Let's get people talking about this. In fact, I'm going on the road with Mark Meckler in a week and a half in Montana. We're going to make 3 stops. I'm going to mention this at our events because we're going to be talking about Convention of States and amending the Constitution. And again, it has to be done from outside Congress. Congress will, they're just never going to do this. We're watching in real time how broken our Congress is. If we cannot even get a bill passed that 82, and it's 75% of Democrats are for the SAVE Act. 75% of Democrats want voter ID, want to prevent illegals from voting, want to make sure you're a citizen to vote. And it's like 85% of Republicans and I want to say moderates. It's not the word I'm looking for. Independents are also for it at like 80-something%. So the average is like 82%. It's so obvious that makes sense, that the American people want it, and yet we can't get it through Congress. What does that tell you? That tells you the system is broken. And the president is trying to push. He's putting all of his weight behind, and it's still not getting done. They're still refusing to get rid of the zombie filibuster and get these basic things done that the American people want done. So I say maybe this would be enough to push President Trump into wanting a convention of states, to pushing for it. Let's get it done fast and get some big things done. And then it would reset the table for how Washington, D.C. works. It would take a ton of power away from Washington. We can carve out, we can literally put Washington, D.C. back into the 17 enumerated powers of the Constitution list and get them out of these other 400 agencies that they've created for themselves. So anyway, that was my main topic tonight. I think this is our chance to literally, remake the way that Congress works and prevent them from being able to hide behind this zombie filibuster from now on, because I just don't think it's going to change there. And even if they somehow, let's just pray Mike Lee pulls off a miracle here. He's a champ, by the way, the fact that he's continued to push this thing the way he has. Let's just say somehow they do. They finally... Somehow they do it in reconciliation. That's not actually possible with some of the issues that are in these bills. But if they were to do this, by the way, does that not also annoy you that they leave it to the parliamentarian? You're not elected to just turn this thing over to some unelected rule, interpreter. There's no judicial branch within the Senate. The only time the Senate is a judicial branch is during impeachment hearings. This is the idea that they're going to try to do this in reconciliation and then let the parliamentarian rule, which we've learned in the last few years does not work at all. Again, it's them hiding behind this institution of the Senate instead of simply saying, do we have the votes or not? Not a supermajority. Do we have a majority vote or not? And if we have 51 votes, which we have 53, counting the vice president, we got 54. But even if we only had 50 and add the vice president, we got 51. We got the majority. Absolutely should be passed. Absolutely should be passed. So one last thing, and then I'll start reading your chat and go to your questions. Thank God for just the fact that Mike Johnson has enough constitutional cojones to stand up on this thing and say we're not going to cave to all of this ridiculous stuff that they're doing. They're basically trying to undo securing the border, deporting illegals, all of that. And they're in the minority. And they were able to send that over from the Senate to the House. Now, explain that to me. How do 53 Republicans allow that to even get sent to the House? And thankfully, Mike Johnson had enough. I don't know if y'all saw that press conference where he's pretty mad and pounding the table, and he's a meek guy. Meek doesn't mean weak; it means strength under control. But he's a meek guy, and he was pretty upset. So, all right, let's jump over here and see what you guys got on your mind tonight. And I apologize for the sound issues opening up. Yeah, and I apologize. I didn't really give the good, the bad, and the ugly, but thank you for saying you're ready for the good, the bad, and the ugly. I kind of gave all of it without naming it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yeah, talking filibuster only, no other way around it. Yeah, okay, great question, Jeremy. Why was the filibuster ever put in the Senate to begin with, and there's not something like that in the House? It was actually essentially by accident. I made some notes on this too. I was gonna talk about it, and I just got carried away with all the rest. So it was actually, let's see, Aaron Burr was presiding over the Senate. In 1806, he was vice president. And so they created this rule book for the Senate, and it created unlimited debate. So it didn't create the zombie filibuster, but it did allow you to just constantly talk, and it didn't have what we have in the House. Well, we always call it in the House when we train you on it at Patriot Academy when you come through a legislative session, is that you call the previous question. So you can essentially make a motion to cut off debate, and if you have a supermajority saying that you want to cut off that debate because people are just talking too long, then you can do that. And that happens. I mean, there are times when there's only a handful of people really interested in that debate. Everybody already knows how they're going to vote, and these people are just going on and on and on and on and on, and everybody else is like, let's get on to the rest of the calendar, get on to some other bills. And so that was kind of the concept there. But even then, it was very, very rare that it was used. It wasn't until, let's see, there was a cloture rule in 1917 that was created. This was, I remember looking this up. This was over the Treaty of Versailles, and what happened was the chairman, I forget his name, of the Senate committee, and Woodrow Wilson hated each other and had been back and forth. And Wilson's trying to create this League of Nations, and it's given a large group of senators thought that it was giving too much power to international agencies. Now, does that sound familiar? It's a little bit like the World Health Organization fight that we had recently. Anyway, and so these senators were trying to stop the treaty from being ratified, and they actually did. They prevented the treaty from being ratified because of those things. And so what they did was these were talking filibusters. Now, this was not a zombie filibuster like we're seeing now. The most famous talking filibusters, it's depicted in the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington with Jimmy Stewart. I talk about it in Constitutional Live, actually, from 15 years ago. But probably the most dramatic ones were Strom Thurmond, who was in the Senate forever. He was kind of the Mitch McConnell of the previous generation. I think he was 90-something by the time maybe even 100 by the time he was out. And he did that during the civil rights debates. There was, a lot of other senators that did that as well. But what happened was the big change came. Let's see, it's 1972, and what they did was they changed this is how complicated it is, and why I think it needs to be simplified by a constitutional amendment. They changed the Senate voting system to a 2-track system, so that if you're able to, so that one filibuster could not halt all Senate business, and they could somehow have business going on these 2 tracks. I don't even understand it. I've never served in the U.S. Senate, so I don't know it, well, but it wouldn't paralyze the process and the floor. And what happened was in 1975, the Senate lowered the cloture threshold from 2/3 to 3/5, which is 60, and that's been the rule ever since. So it's been going on for decades. What is that? 50 years now that they've been doing this, but it was rarely used, and you didn't have, it was kind of used to prevent these long speeches and that sort of thing, and they could just place a hold on a bill saying they're going to force a cloture vote. So, I mean, honestly, it's a way for senators to not have to do their job. That's what it is. And that's why I think they'll never get rid of it themselves. We have to get rid of it through a constitutional amendment and tell them we want majority rule, and essentially give them their rule book instead of letting them write the rules for themselves, because it is a swamp, and unfortunately the swamp has taken over. So, yeah, I think Thune should go too. He's proven he's not a leader. It's basically what President Trump just got through saying. You got to show leadership and get the votes and do what needs to be done. Let's see. I'm not even going to repeat that one. I'm unoffended. Unoffendable. Thank you, Linda. I love that. Oh, thank you, Josie. Love it. Love it. I'm a white woman and I have no interest in the left. My family has served the U.S. since at least the Civil War, and we were fighting against the Confederacy, so why should I change sides now? That's good. Um, yeah, yeah. Oh, there's some good comments in here. Thank you for taking the Constitution class, Vicky. Yes, well done. Ah, okay. So, Montana, yes. Okay, here's what's going to happen. I can tell you right now, in case you don't get the email, we are going to send out an email to everyone, but I just saw the flyer last night for the 3 stops. So let me just give that to you on the air right now. Okay. We're going to be in, so we're not going to be in Missoula. We're going to be south of Missoula. And I can't remember where y'all are from, if it was south or east or where, but we're going to be in Great Falls on Tuesday the 14th at 6:30, Embassy Church. We're going to be in Hamilton, Montana. So I think it's about 30 minutes south of Missoula, if I remember right, looking at the map, at the Ravalli Country Event Center. I don't know if I said that right. And that's on the 15th, April 15th at 6:30. And then on the 16th at 6:30, we'll be in Kalispell, Montana at the Red Lion Hotel. So let's see if I could copy that in or find a link. Okay, there is a page. Let me see if I can find that real quick. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that trip, man. We're gonna have a good time. I think the events are gonna be phenomenal. There is a lot of movement in Montana. It's on the bubble, and I think we can get her over the hump. Uh, where is this registration page? How about this? Let me. Oh, it's where you live. You're in Hamilton? Are you kidding me? Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why we moved it over there. Okay, I think what I'm going to have to do, let me see if I can copy. Give me 1 second, and that way all of our folks in Montana will know where to go. It's going to be fun. All right. Yeah, we've actually got a lot of events coming up. It's going to be a busy, busy summer, busy April and May. We ended up doing, in fact, we're taking the scholars to the Arc and to Philly and to Washington, D.C. That's going to be incredible. Okay, Montana, here we go. So here's our. See if the chat will let me. Won't let me post a picture, so I'm going to have to do it this way. Well, this may not work. I've got it. My setup does not allow me to go from. I know I need to improve all of this. It's terrible. Let's see. Very annoying. Hang on. Okay, here we go. Now I'm copy and pasting into the chat. These are the locations. It's going to be, this is worth the trouble, guys, because these events could determine, I'm not exaggerating when I say the future of the country, because if we don't get Montana, it's going to be very difficult to get to 34. Okay, so Tuesday. Well, that tells you how bad my system is. I cannot, there, you at least have the addresses if you can figure that out. I apologize. Okay, what else? What else? Let's see. A mostly white woman. That's actually kind of funny. Oh, okay. So what's happening? So this is April 25th, Western Pennsylvania, to save the Republic one community at a time. All right, Tony, is that one of your events? Love it. Let's go. I don't have anything in Northern California right now. I'm going to San Diego for a week. I'll be there next week for a Liberty Pastors event, and then Flashpoint's going to be in San Diego. I also have we just agreed to an event in Washington State. So we're going to do that. That's where I'll be on April, I think 25th, actually the same date as Tony's event. Yeah, Audrey, that's the problem. I mean, we got Republican House, Republican Senate, Republican President. We've gotten a lot. Okay, let's not downplay the victories. We've had a tremendous 13 months, more victories than I've ever seen in my lifetime, but almost all from executive orders and the president, and then some through legislation. All right, I don't see any other questions. So, thank y'all for joining me in the tavern. Be thinking about this potential amendment to basically we end the filibuster. If they're not willing to end the zombie filibuster, the American people have to take it on themselves and say, we're going to do it. And that's not the first time it's happened. I mean, there's been other issues where the American people clamored for something and Congress wouldn't do it. And finally, we had to do it with a constitutional amendment. And so I do think there is more of an appetite for big changes like this than ever before. People realize the system's broke. They're frustrated. They're just as frustrated as we are. I know if you're here in the tavern, you probably wouldn't be here if you weren't paying attention and as frustrated as I am. But there's a lot of people out there that they're ready to be a part of something. They want to make a difference. So getting them involved with Patriot Academy, Convention of States, Wall Builders, all these things, now's the time to do it. And that's also one of the things, I would leave with you is that if you've got a pastor or a church that has not been involved up to this point, you need to go back to them. Even if they said no in the past, go back to them and lay out some of the things that have happened and say, don't you want to help end the mutilation of children? Don't you want to help stop Islam from taking over our country and 9-year-olds being forced into marriage? Go to them and say, this is what's at stake, and we have a way to do this in a nonpartisan way in the church. We just want to do a Bible study on what the Bible says about how to be a good citizen and how to treat our neighbors. And I think you might see some changed hearts in pastors. I've talked about my pastor a lot, Jimmy Pruitt. He changed, 3 years ago, and has become one of the best pastors in the country on addressing the cultural issues. And so don't. I'm not saying don't leave if they just finally will not do anything after years of trying to get them to. You probably do need to find a new church and find a new pastor. But for those that in the past have said no, I think now's a good time to go back to them. Okay. All right, Mike's in Washington. Let me see. I can tell you where that's going to be. It is going to be April 26th at Grace City Church in Wenatchee. Is that how you say that? Wenatchee, Washington. This is Josh McPherson's church. Josh is one of those pastors that, hadn't really talked a lot about this kind of stuff in the past. And he is so on fire right now. He's very involved at the White House and with our efforts through for liberty and justice and the White House Faith Office. And I mean, he is beyond on fire, man. This guy's, I love him. And so anyway, that's that is close to you, Mike. Okay, good. Well, look for that. April 26th will be at Grace City Church. And then if you're in Texas on April 12th, I'm going to be at Victory Family Church up in Wise County. And that evening, we're having a big One Nation Under God event at the Wise County Courthouse. So that's going to be one of our 250th events. It's going to be fun. And then Flashpoint will be in San Marcos, California on the 9th and 10th. And let's see where else I can tell you about. You Florida folks, I'll be at the Florida Homeschool Convention on May 23rd. We've got Liberty Pastors Wichita on May 11th and 12th. We got the Texas Homeschool Convention on May 28th, 29th, and 30th. And then Flashpoint Tulsa, and possibly going to Michigan after that. And then we'll be out at Birchman Baptist in Texas on June 21st. And as always, going to Calvary Christian Center in Yuba City, California for July 4th. It'll be the Sunday before July 4th on the 28th. And then I'll be at my home church of the Bridge in Fredericksburg on July 5th, the day after our big Independence Day celebration here at the campus. All right, I kept you long tonight. No, it's only 6:45. It's not bad. We did pretty good. Thank y'all for coming out and joining me in the tavern tonight. We'll see you next week. Take a last swig. God bless everybody.